Thank you so much. I'm grateful for the opportunity to talk to you about one of the most critical development issues today. Indeed, as you know, COVID has resulted in the worst education crisis in a century. The pandemic has led to massive school closures that still persist today in many countries. The global learning crisis has deepened even more than previously feared. Because of the disruptions, we estimate that the share of children in low and middle-income countries living in learning poverty, which was already over 50% before the pandemic, could potentially reach 70%. This would lead to losses of $17 trillion in lifetime earnings, or about 14% of today's global GDP. Aside from these learning losses, children worldwide are experiencing significant health challenges, such as increased depression, anxiety, and malnutrition. To address these losses, which could permanently scar a whole generation, a strong and swift national and global response is essential. First, safe school reopening cannot wait. Aggressive programs to bring all children and youth safely back to school and make sure they stay in school are vital. Furthermore, systems need to assess children's learning and adjust the teaching process to match their needs. This is a very complex task for schools and teachers. Meeting this massive challenge requires a very strong commitment, adequate resources, and a relentless effort to be more efficient. This is even more challenging when countries are facing demands across sectors that they need to balance in a context of fiscal pressures, while households have suffered massive income and health shocks. As a result, the policy responses have been slow or lacking. Education budgets have not adjusted proportionately to the challenges brought on by COVID-19, especially in the poorest countries. Despite additional funding needs, 2/3 of low and lower middle-income countries have in fact cut, or at best kept constant, their public education budgets since the onset of the pandemic. And in general, a very small fraction of the recovery packages at country level have been allocated to education, despite the large impact the learning crisis could have on this generation's productivity and well-being. Now, to address this global issue, we all have a role to play. At the national level, countries can increase resource mobilization, efficiency of education service delivery, and develop prioritized and targeted investment cases. International partners can increase the volume and predictability of international aid for education. For instance, since the beginning of the crisis, the World Bank has deployed more than $150 billion to help developing countries tackle the health, education, economic, social, and poverty implications of the pandemic. We all, as partners, can also join hands in strongly advocating for education finance and making sure it becomes front and center of pandemic response and recovery. Finally, let me say that the World Bank is fully committed to working with governments and partners to help minimize learning losses. We know very well that the well-being of our children and our youth, and indeed our collective future, depends on this. Thank you.